So the purpose of this tutorial is to show how the storyboard works. Before we explain the features of the storyboard, let me go back for a second and talk about the job of creating an actual book. So before you start on a new project, it's a good idea to go into album settings and set your parameters for the next book. I always work in the universal size. This gives me the freedom of designing square albums and then later downrest them here to a particular square album from a lot of these album companies. Then I'm going to change the prefix for my spreads to, I usually name it after the client. And then I'm going to set the spread folder. This is where my spreads will be saved. And I'm just going to make up a new folder name here. There we go. And then click Save. So, when you create the storyboard, you're looking at all the photos that are going into the album. So these are all the photos that the client has asked for. So I'm just going to select them all and right click on one of them and choose storyboard. It says 10 or more images selected, continue, yes. And if you do this on a fresh new folder, if Bridge is visiting this folder for the first time, you need to let Bridge create all the thumbnails, otherwise you'll get an error message. But what we're looking at here is just a regular Photoshop document with all the thumbnails for the images. So it just takes a few seconds. And there we are. So this is just a normal Photoshop document, and each photo is represented by a thumbnail. So this is not the high-res file. It's just a reference to this file. So it's important that you don't move these high-res files on the hard drive. The storyboard can be saved. If you're working on a book and decide to call it tonight, then you can save it and continue the next day. The most important setting is to be in the Move tool and have this auto select checkbox turned on. So the Move tool is shortcut V, so if you're in any other tool you can always click V and then you come back to the Move tool. Now with the Move tool selected, you can drag the thumbnails around. So let's say I can click on a picture and then I can hit the delete key to get rid of it, because that was a duplicate. Same here. And then I'll start dragging the photos around to group them together. So we have pictures of the groom, we have pictures of the bride. There's a picture of the bride there. There's some more. And this is what I spend most of my time doing when I'm creating a book layout. I'm trying to figure out what pictures belong together on each spread. So get rid of that. These seems to be variants of each other. That's a duplicate. These are pictures from the first meeting. Just group them together. Here we have portraits. If I want, I can drag a selection around several images and then just drag them around. Right. Okay, so let's look at what we do once we figure this out. I'm not going to go through the whole procedure. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I like to group the photos into categories. So we have pictures of the groom, pictures of the bride, first meeting, their portraits, their wedding ceremony, coming out of the church, etc. The purpose of this is to have control over the number of spreads that you're going to create. It's often the case, it's this usual mistake that beginners do, is that you start making spreads, and then you have an agreement with the customer that you're making a 13 spread album. And then suddenly you created 12 spreads, and now you have 10 images left. So you're you're overflowing your spread requirement. Or another typical scenario that you do in the beginning is that you start making spreads, and then at the end you have 10 images left that didn't fit anywhere, so now you had to create sort of a garbage spread in the middle of the book somewhere. So sooner or later you're going to have to make those hard decisions where the pictures are what pictures belong together on each spread. You know, some images like this bouquet, you have to decide where's it going to be. So the best thing is to do this now and don't worry about the actual layout of the spreads. Yeah, you can do that later. So what we do now is, when we have this, let's take another one here. It's the picture of the groom. Okay, so what I do now is I select these pictures that belong together, and then I click on this retarget button, and that launches the template selection dialog. So now I look at my exact matches, and the OK matches are the ones involving square holes. I have quite a few exact matches here, so I just see, I think I'm going to go with this one. So that will drop the photos into the holes, just like you're used to do from Bridge. Another good thing about the storyboard is that you don't have to work with Bridge at all. This thing I'm going to turn off. So, and then the usual things, enlarge a photo in a hole, swap them around, etc. And then save the spread. So I'm going to call this first one 010. Then the next one will be 020, and the next one will be 030. I use this spacing of 10 so that if I need to create a spread in between, I can call it 015 and not have to resort to 1A or something silly like that. Okay, so once this is saved, I'll come back to the storyboard now, and if you notice here in the layers palette, the pictures that I selected that were chosen for this spread, they're still selected here in the layers palette. So I just have to click the backspace key on the keyboard to get rid of them. You know, they're done. So then I continue with the next one, which is the first meeting. And notice here the order of the photos. She's coming up towards him for the first meeting, and then they have their first meeting. When I click on retarget here and then choose one of these layouts, the pictures will be dropped into the holes in the same order as they appear on the storyboard. This is to minimize the number of swaps you need to do. So this looks alright. Well, you know, you can do things like round corners if you want. Swap two images around. But this is described in other videos. So I'm just going to save the spread, and this is going to be number 20. In an actual book I wouldn't have round corners on one spread and square corners on another. And coming back here, I just press the backspace key and I'm done with that, and then I'll continue with these other groups, right? So this is the overview of the storyboard. If you want to make the storyboard larger, you have, you know, image canvas size, you can do that. You can enlarge these. They're just regular layers, so but it's a good idea to zoom in and out, and I use the mouse. I'm still in the 80s. If you have a vacuum board, there's probably a shortcut for that, but what I do on the Mac is I hold down the Alt key and I spin the mouse wheel to go in and out, so I can see what the pictures are. And it's always a good idea to organize your workspace. What I've done here, what I always do when I upgrade to a new Photoshop, is I set up all the palettes. So I have my actions here, I have my history here, I have my layers palette. It's a good idea to have them visible at the same time. Then I have some room for adjustment layers here. And then when you've done that, you can go into Workspace and New Workspace and name, I have Shell's Workspace. So if I mess it up, then I can always go back and say I want Shell's Workspace again. So there you go. Good luck, and if you have any questions about Storyboard, please visit the ProAlbum-Designer Facebook page and ask me questions there.